second of the NAPLAN criteria is text structure, and you can see here that that is the organisation of the structural components of persuasive text, introduction, body and conclusion, into an appropriate and effective text structure. For the narrative text, if you get asked to write a narrative, it relates to the organisation of narrative features including orientation, complication and resolution into an appropriate and effective text structure. So going back to the table that I've come up with here, the word that I encourage you to remember here is formulaic. So just to recap here, text structure for persuasive, what they're looking for is introduction, development of an argument, the body, and a conclusion. And for narrative, what they're looking for is orientation, complication, and resolution. Let's just have a quick look at what that all means. So for the persuasive text structure, the introduction needs to introduce the reader to the main idea of the essay. It needs to provide some context or identify the issue associated with the topic. Importantly, you do need to capture the interest of the reader, and that also relates to the audience one that I talked about earlier. You need to explain why the topic is important. Probably the most important thing in the introduction is a thesis statement, which states the topic and the writer's position on it. So you need that the sense of your position in relation to the topic, and then describes the line of argument to be taken in the writing. Now, importantly, you do not get penalised here for using a formulaic structure to outline a list of arguments or main ideas to be developed in the body. You can use a pertinent fact followed by some elaboration, and you can even use a short relevant anecdote to illustrate the topic or make generalizations about the topic. The body of your persuasive text needs to convince the reader to agree with the position taken. You need to develop the points of the argument that you've outlined or foreshadowed in your introduction, and a case for each point is developed with supporting evidence. Now, that evidence could include an explanation, it could include examples, comparisons, contrasts, it could include expert opinion or references, quotations, data, and/or anecdotes. Your conclusion needs to bring closure to the argument in a way that reinforces the writer's position on the topic. So again, you can use a formulaic structure to summarize the thesis and/or points of the essay. You can either repeat them exactly, so check that out. You don't lose marks for repeating them exactly. You can do that, or you can retell them in different words. You can provide a final perspective or reflection on the topic that reinforces the thesis or writer's position in a meaningful way. So again, it can be a personal perspective or reflection, an anecdote or quote, a plan of action, a call to action, or a recommendation. Importantly, with NAPLAN, you do not lose marks for example, in your body having firstly, secondly, thirdly. You actually in some ways get rewarded for that. So as long as it is logical and it clearly shows that you understand the difference between an introduction, a body and conclusion, you're going to get rewarded in this part of the criteria. Okay, for narrative text structure, you need an orientation, which is basically the beginning of the story or narrative, introducing the setting and characters. You need a complication, so some sort of problem that introduces conflict, danger, or tension that must be resolved, and then of course you need a resolution to that conflict. You can also have a coda at the end, which kind of, I suppose, involves some sort of deeper understanding that the character comes to, or some sort of moral position, I suppose. Sophisticated narrative structures or plot devices can get you marks. So think about perhaps using things like foreshadowing or flashback. You might like to think about a red herring or a cliffhanger, a coda, as we talked about, or a twist, some sort of evaluation or reflection, circular or parallel plots. So if you can do something that's a little bit more sophisticated, perhaps a narrative that's not always linear or something like that, then you will get rewarded in NAPLAN.